Hello everyone, this is Patty and I am your Sunday school teacher today. Today's scripture is Exodus chapter 1 verse 8 to chapter 2 verse 10. And today's theme is Baby Moses is saved. Let's have our opening prayer. Dear God, thank you for allowing us to gather here today to learn more about Jesus. Please help our ears to listen, our minds to learn, and our hearts to love as we hear the stories of His work. Amen. What are some examples of times that you have needed protection? Who or what protected you? Maybe your mom or dad, your sister, brother, good friend, even your dog. The main point of our lesson today is that we can trust God to protect us. Let's have a little review before we get started. Last week we learned about Joseph, son of Jacob, and how he forgave his brothers for selling him into slavery in Egypt. Although Joseph's brothers had treated him terribly, he knew that his journey to Egypt was all part of God's plan. How was this so? It was through the relationship that he formed with the Egyptian Pharaoh that Joseph was eventually able to save many people from starvation, including his own family. After Joseph forgave his family, Jacob and his 12 sons all moved to Egypt and settled there. Pharaoh had given them some of the best land, so their family had prospered. Eventually, Jacob and all of his sons died, but their families continued to grow. After a while, a new man became Pharaoh, one who didn't know about Joseph and all of the wonderful things that he had done for the Egyptian people. Instead, he saw that the Israelites were becoming numerous. The Pharaoh was frightened because he felt that the people would grow in number and eventually overpower him. And so he came up with an evil plan. Pharaoh's evil plan was to have all of the Hebrew baby boys killed. If there were no baby boys, they wouldn't grow into strong men who could take over Egypt. That was his way of thinking anyway. But do you know what? God is bigger than Pharaoh, and stronger too, and God has a plan. Let's read the first part of today's reading to find out what happened. Again, we are reading Exodus chapter 1, verses 8 to 21. Now, a new king arose over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. He said to his people, "Look, the Israelite people are more numerous and more powerful than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, or they will increase, and in the event of war, join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land." Therefore, they set taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor. They built supply cities, Pithom and Ramses, for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread, so that the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. The Egyptians became ruthless in imposing tasks on the Israelites and made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar and brick and in every kind of field labor. They were ruthless in all the tasks that they imposed on them. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, "When you act as midwives to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a boy, kill him, but if it is a girl, she shall live." But the midwives feared God. They did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but they let the boys live. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this and allowed the boys to live?" The midwives said to Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them." So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very strong. And because the midwives feared God, He gave them families. It sounds as though the Egyptians were doing everything they could do to make the lives of the Israelites as miserable as possible. As slaves, the Israelites had to work for no pay, and they were ill-treated by their Egyptian masters. Further, the king of Egypt ordered the Hebrew midwives to kill all newborn boys. What is a midwife? Well, midwives are people who help women give birth to their children. The thought of murdering innocent babies would have been horrific to the Hebrew midwives, and so they decided to lie in order to save and protect those little babies who were God's people. Unfortunately, the Pharaoh realized what the midwives were doing and altered his evil plan. But do you know what? Pharaoh's new orders did not change God's own plan. God wanted to save a very special baby boy named Moses, who would later grow up to be a great leader of the Hebrew people. Here is the rest of today's story. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, "Every boy that is born to the Hebrews you shall throw into the Nile, but you shall let every girl live." Now a man from the house of Levi went and married a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine baby, she hid him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and plastered it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds on the bank of the river. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her attendants walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds, and sent her maid to bring it. When she opened it, she saw the child. He was crying, and she took pity on him. "This must be one of the Hebrews' children," she said. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Yes." So the girl went and called the child's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse it for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed it. When the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and she took him as her son. She named him Moses because, she said, "I drew him out of the water." So, despite the king's attempts to oppress the Israelites, one mother in particular fought back and decided that she would protect her son. This mother was Jochebed, and she was the mother of Moses. When Moses was born, Jochebed hid him from the Pharaoh's soldiers for 3 whole months. Can you imagine trying to hide a baby for that long? It would be a very difficult thing to do because babies are so helpless. They cry and they need constant care, and they grow. When Jochebed could no longer keep Moses hidden, she found a reed basket and coated the inside with tar so that it wouldn't leak. She placed Moses in the basket and sent him afloat on the Nile River. His big sister Miriam stood on the bank to see what would happen to him. What sort of dangers might there have been for baby Moses in the river? Alligators, snakes, currents, big waves? These would all be possible dangers to that wee little baby. Don't forget, though, that God's plan had a place for Moses. The basket floated down the river until it arrived at the home of, guess who? Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. There, Pharaoh's daughter, Bithiah, discovered Moses in his little basket, and she had compassion for him. She decided she wanted to keep this baby safe. Conveniently enough, Miriam was nearby, and she offered to help find someone who could nurse the boy until he was older. Bithiah agreed and gave the baby to Jochebed to nurse. In a few years, when the baby was old enough to stop nursing, Jochebed sent him to the palace to live with Bithiah, who named him Moses, meaning out of the water. Isn't that an incredible way for this story to work out for Moses? God took care of Moses and had a special plan for him. God also protects us and has a plan for our lives. He will always be with us and keep us safe. Most importantly, He rescues us from sin and from death, and He will always love us. Let's have our closing prayer. Dear God, Thank you for protecting and guiding us in all things. We are made aware of your special plan when we read the stories of the Bible. We see your plan in the stories of Abraham and Sarah, and Isaac and Rebekah, and Jacob and Rachel. We see your plan in the way that you took care of Joseph when he was sold into slavery. And we see your plan in the way that you protected Moses during his journey down the river. We also see your plan in the way that another child, Jesus, was protected from an evil king many hundreds of years after Moses lived. Thank you for your incredible love, God, and thank you for always being there for us. Here's today's craft. It's called a Baby Moses handprint craft. You can make a sweet representation of Baby Moses in his basket with a few simple craft supplies. For this project, you will need paper dinner plates, blue paint, green construction paper, and a Baby Moses template. First, cut the paper plates in half. Paint each half with blue paint and allow it to dry. In the meantime, trace your hand on the green construction paper to make reeds for your scene. Cut out the Baby Moses template. Once the plate is dry, glue the rushes onto the plate. Add the Baby Moses cutout, and you're all done. Enjoy your craft. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next time.